and open your chests, throw on your armor and head out on a quest. Hey, hey, it's a brand new day. On the Sword Coast, your allies will help with blades and bows and magic as well. Hey, hey, heroes on their way, fighting forever against overwhelming odds, fighting together in favor of multiple gods. Idle champions of the forgotten realms, idle champions, adventure never ends. Idle champions, did you want a man? Idle champions, you will say it again. Idle champions. From Waterdeep to Icewind Dale, head out to Chull or Shadowfell. Hey, hey, together we stay. Walk to the monsters, walk to the boss, walk to the right, it's never a loss. Hey, hey, bad guys to slay, fighting forever against overwhelming odds, fighting together in favor of multiple gods. Idle champions of the forgotten realms, idle champions, adventure never ends. Idle champions, did you want to dance? Idle champions, you will say it again. Idle champions.
Of course not. Now we did it. Now we did it, folks. Tech issues. I am Gaarawarr, and I am streaming from my backup computer because my main computer had some issues, and I'm in the process of well, putting it back together. I tore it apart. I'm waiting on a couple pieces. And then I will be putting it back together, and hopefully it works. Hopefully it works. But hey, I got a backup computer. So we are here today on the backup computer for Gaarawarr's Guide, the tutorial show. A topic that it's not the deepest topic, but it's one that we've kind of talked about as in like here and there. On a variety of shows for years. And today we're gonna get into it. We're talking about the super secret DPS club. It doesn't have a lot of members. They are small but mighty. And yeah, we're gonna dive into that. Joining me today in the production booth, dealing with my lack of ability to function as a human being, is Jay. Thank Jay for putting up with me today. Jay's going to be grabbing your questions from chat. As long as you put question colon like it says down below. Question colon like it says down below in front of your questions. They will grab it and it'll go in a document over here so that I can answer whatever questions you might have. You know, disclaimer, usual disclaimer applies. I am not a full-time employee of Codename Entertainment, so I do not have the inside scoop on most things. I've got some info, but I can't share it. I can never share it because we got to plan these. We plan these shows out months in advance, so I might know like who's coming next. For instance, this coming Wednesday, Simmerl arrives. You can see on the screen. Next event, 4 days, 2 hours. Simmerl brings Halsin from Baldur's Gate 3. They've got a pretty neat kit. Yeah. We all knew that was coming for a while, right? that got spoiled a long time ago. And I might know things like that. But if it hasn't been talked about publicly by the devs, I can't talk about it. But I can talk about, all kinds of stuff. Answer questions about it. Game systems, champions. I'll do my best. Okay. We're just going to dive in. I already have our three friends on the screen. We're going to get to work. So what exactly, I think the first question that people are probably going is like, what the heck is super secret DPS? This is a club that started years ago. My recollection, Mars and I are probably, Mars mentioned yesterday that he thinks the founding member of this is someone other than who I think it is. This happens when the histories are passed down from generation to generation, oral histories instead of written ones because nobody took notes. I don't know. There might be notes out there somewhere. My recollection is that this started in year 2. The year 2 of Champions. So the second year of the game was out, with Paultin being the founding member of the Super Secret DPS Club. And basically, the Super Secret DPS Club consists of champions. He was the lone member. Consists of champions who, for whatever reason, actually do decent damage. They've got good damage scaling, and yet they don't have a DPS tag. So, again, my recollection is Paultin. Paultin's always been a support goal find champion. He came in with some strong scaling. Mars thinks it was Hitch. Now, Hitch originally was a DPS. They were a DPS support, and they had the DPS tag taken away in a rework. My recollection is that rework happened after Paultin was already in the game. That's the point of contention. We have to dig into the old lore to find that, and yeah, I don't know that it matters. Because we exist in the world as it is right now, and in the world as it is right now, Hitch is a support. Hitch is a support with really good damage scaling. And the most recent addition, and one that really surprised a lot of people, Penelope Half-Pint. Healing support gold and now a debuff champion, has always been healing support and gold, but long have we conjectured in the community that maybe she was supposed to be the DPS of Heroes of the Plains, because Heroes of the Plains has no DPS champion. I think that, like, they're the only affiliation in the game. No, I'm pretty positive. They're the only affiliation in the game that doesn't have a dedicated DPS. Like, there isn't even DPS / support. They're all support debuff, tank support, like they support healing, speed. There isn't a DPS champion. But Penelope came into the game swinging hard, and we're going to talk about that. And she continues to swing for the fences to this day. So this is the I'm going to confuse some things. The crux of the conversation. Commodore Crux is a DPS. He doesn't count. But basically, DPS champions support champions. See, this is the confusion. Who can DPS? Why does this matter? A lot of you are wondering. There are many variants in the game. Many. Some of them don't allow you to use anyone with a DPS tag at all. There are patron challenges, and there have been patron challenges in the past. We don't have them anymore, but in the olden days, back in my day, there were patron challenges that were like so-and-so has to be like your DPS, but it can't be like, it has to be, use a support champion and have them set Bud and stuff like that. And, man, that broke some people's brains trying to figure that out. But whenever you deal with a situation like this, if they ever bring something like that back again, or when you run into these variants where you're not allowed to use a DPS, or maybe you're just really restricted, it's important to me. I like to keep lots of tools in my toolbox, and one of the tools available to you is understanding the super secret DPS club, knowing that actually, yeah, there are champions who can actually do damage. And maybe aren't a DPS. And when you're really restricted, maybe the DPS you have available to you doesn't fit with the rest of the team, and so isn't really reaching their potential, and maybe you might try one of these and find that they outshine it. I want to be very clear, this isn't necessarily all of the members, potential members. There are a lot of champions in the game who have grabbed the DPS role from others when people are trying to build formations. Some of this has to do with formation building and maybe a misunderstanding of how you build formations. You know, first and foremost, when you're building a formation, you want to keep in mind that you're trying to focus all of your buffs onto a specific champion, your primary DPS. And when you're in situations where all of your buffs can hit multiple people, if you have a support champion that has stronger scaling, again, in a restricted situation where you can't necessarily use the most ideal champions, you may end up with a support as the one who's doing your damage. There's also an interesting bug in the game, and Mars wanted me to ask me if I was going to bring this up, and I actually do want to make sure that it's understood that it is a bug. There is a bug in the game based around debuff champions, and I refer to it as Bud's Buggy. So they're Bud, base ultimate damage, is buggy, but Bud's Buggy as the abbreviation. Kind of like Bugs Bunny. Bud's Buggy, and what happens with Bud's Buggy is there are a couple, well, it's built around magnified by debuff champions, but the ones that really pop are Orkira and Freely. More often than not, and honestly, for me, guaranteed every time. If I throw Orkira in a formation and I push real deep, I break the game, and Bud's Buggy, and it's a situation where basically it doesn't even matter that I have a really strong DPS in there. Suddenly, there's a couple triggers. You'll look up here and you'll see that like Orkira or Freely has a 0 base DPS. And these numbers don't matter, but it's a signifier that the game is broken and it's not registering correctly. And you're potentially entering a Bud's Buggy situation. And then Orkira will start showing up here as your damage dealer, as your Bud setter. And the thing that really exemplifies Bud's Buggy as opposed to just a super secret DPS is the damage that whoever is triggering, whoever's showing up down here, usually Orkira or Freely, is doing will scale based off the area you're on. Will continue to scale as you go further in the game. Yeah. It's something I've reproduced. I can reproduce basically 99% of the time. There's a couple campaigns it doesn't trigger in, oddly enough. I never could figure out why. Done it on stream, submitted numerous support tickets, talked to developers. It confuses them. It confuses them. So there is another situation where you could end up with a non-DPS champion setting your Bud, and that's what we're talking about here, is setting your Bud, being your damage dealer. And it has nothing to do with the super secret DPS club. That's a bug. This is scaling. So we're going to dive in and we're going to talk about each of these champions. The idea here, though, is just understanding that you can, for whatever reason, build a formation around these champions with them as your DPS if you needed to. They shouldn't be your main DPS likely. Shouldn't be. You can choose anybody you want to main in this game and be your DPS for every adventure. I'm never gonna hold you back from that. I even accept people using Artemis. But ultimately, do whatever you want. I mean, I do, and I play the game just fine. We got Lurking Rider in chat. Lurking Rider, their main is nerds DPS. You know, look, if it brings you joy, it's a single player game. Have a ball. But just understand I'm going to teach you just the basics of these champions. We'll go into it and just understand you're building formations that focus their strengths, right? And just buff them, right? It's nothing major. You don't need like specific champions to pull it off. You just need to build a proper formation that focuses buffs onto these champions. All right, let's talk about, again, I believe Paultin was the first. And I believe that because the weird thing about Paultin that made him such an odd super secret DPS, and kind of sparked this idea of super secret DPS, is that Paultin's kit doesn't read as if he should ever be the one setting Bud, ever. So let's talk about it. So support gold find, remember the Waffle Crew, which, and they don't really talk about that anymore. His base attack is basically a poison dart. It is both ranged and magic at the same time because he attacks, and so does Simon, his boy, sitting on his shoulder. He's an animated evil puppet. So Simon attacks with a poison dart, and Paultin attacks too sometimes, but Paultin attacks with magic, Simon with the dart. So you actually get both. His gold find is lucky. He increases party's gold find for each champion adjacent to him, but you know, this doesn't affect your damage at all. Magical secrets increases the damage of champions not adjacent to him by 50% for each champion that he is adjacent to. He doesn't get this buff. He doesn't buff himself, folks. This is for people that are not adjacent to him. And I know that technically you might be like, well, then he's not adjacent to himself, but he has prime adjacency to himself. And if we go over here, he is not receiving magical secrets. Okay? Just to be clear. So his buff doesn't apply to himself. His other is gold fine. Stronger Together increases the damage of Waffle Crew members in the formation by 150% for each member of the Waffle Crew in the formation. That's neat, but I don't have any other members of the Waffle Crew in here, and you don't need to make him be a super secret DPS. His spec choices lean into either the gold find of Lucky or the buff of Magical Secrets. As a super secret DPS, neither of these really matter, so you might as well make some more gold. Because remember, that buff doesn't buff himself. Now, if you were combining him with someone who can shift buffs back onto someone, maybe, but this doesn't even work. Like if you're thinking like Valentine pushes them onto DPS champions. He's not a DPS, so you know, who knows what kind of situations might turn like magical secrets into something that he could receive. Doesn't currently exist that I'm aware of. Not without the use of an actual DPS champion, like War Duck maybe, but then he's going to be doing damage. So yeah, that's it. That's his whole kit, folks. And this is what's confusing, and what's always confused everybody about Paultin and what made him an amazing super secret DPS is because he's truly undercover. There is no reason when reading this kit for you to think that he would ever do damage. Ever. And yet, for whatever reason, you can actually build around him. We're going to actually pull other people out of here. You can actually build a formation around him, and he can do damage. So, like, if we use, let's just do a super basic formation stuff. We're not going to get fancy, just going to get dancy. Sorry. Listening to a lot of Pink lately. So let's just go with some basic stuff. that easily points buffs toward people. This is not the greatest formation for Niali, but yeah, it'll be fine. We'll just call this the front row. We're not gonna. We're just gonna use a couple champions and a couple buffs, and then we'll use the same set for everybody, so that we get a kind of a consistent situation here that doesn't really have anything to do with the champions that we're supporting, but just has to do with the super secret DPS we're using. This is probably a good situation. What if we just take these up to their whatever they have here. All right. So in this situation, again, this is all comes down to formation building. So Celeste is buffing adjacent, Bruner is buffing in the same column, Niali's buffing the column behind, and Calliope's buffing the column in front. So everybody's pointing their buffs at Paultin, and guess what? He's the DPS, right? This is standard. This is just basic formation building. Now, what's weird about this is obviously we've put him in the DPS position, but when you've built a formation that might, like, let's say we had built a formation that could have buffed either of these columns, if you have a DPS that isn't super strong, those exist in this game, and you had Paultin, for some reason you would put Paultin here. Normally you wouldn't, because you wouldn't want them adjacent to it. They would just grab the damage. Because for whatever reason, their damage scaling, that if we go through here and we look at like global or self DPS upgrade, their base damage and then the amount that it's upgraded is becomes of such an amount that it's just does better damage than kind of what we might call lower tier damage dealers. If you all prayed a tier list. Once upon a time, I proved this mathematically on the stream. I did a tier list for my own account, basically trying using one formation layout and trying a bunch of different DPS champions with my current setup and the best possible formation for each of them, using the same campaign, just because that's a big limiting factor. And the result was the super secret DPS club was actually mid-tier. There were 2 tiers, like I did like a 5-tier system. They were mid, and there were 2 tiers of champions below them. There weren't a lot in the lower tiers. The fact has always kind of been that if you plot out like a true bell curve, the vast majority of champions are the big part kind of a mid-tier, and then and most are above. They've always been that way, and it's just getting better now. So they've been kind of consistently. This group has kind of consistently performed. So yeah, it's odd. They don't have any feats that would support them being a DPS. Again, this is gold find. There's some all champions damage. It's a really odd situation that you could find yourself in, but for whatever reason, Paultin packs a punch. Alliteration. I wasn't even planning that. Yeah, Paultin packs a punch. So keep them in mind. They are again. I believe they're the founding members. But let's talk about on that. And where were we at? We were in the 167. So let's keep that in mind. Let's talk about Hitch. Get hitched. Hitch. Kind of the first evergreen champion people encounter or should encounter, because if you click on the hamburger button up here at the top left, you sign up for the newsletter, you get Hitch. Get hitched today, and Idle Champions is my famous slogan. But yeah, you sign up for newsletter, you get a free champion over here in Seed 8. And they're great. They're an amazing support. Early game and into the mid game, and and they can show up and later on. Their big thing is they like to buff champions that have charisma of 14 or higher. So it increases the damage of champions if their charisma score is 14 or higher. Theirs is 17. So they are a self-buffer. They do buff themselves. This comes from the fact that they used to be a DPS support. Oddly, when they didn't just take the DPS roll away and leave the scaling, they changed his scaling. And yet it was still real strong. It still came out real strong. Well, we're not fully upgraded. We're not upgraded yet, but it came out real strong. And can buff himself. Also gets multiple attacks. You'll see there's a melee dagger and then a thrown dagger, and he can get more daggers. There's a feat, there's a spec choice. I recommend choosing one or the other. You don't need both. Ricochet, the daggers, when thrown, can bounce around randomly up to 5 times, and if they do, each stack buffs the main buff. So there's some swinginess to the kit based off how many times it bounces, but it all feeds into itself, which is nice. The spec choices, you can have another dagger, which if you don't have the feat for it yet, you would go this. It is the most optimal way. I did the math. You want 1 more dagger. 2 more daggers is subpar compared to a dagger, like the feat plus charismatic. So charismatic just, again, buffs natural performer again. And their kit, based off, we'll try all of these like fully leveled up later. But we're already running an even higher number than we were running. I hadn't even leveled them up all the way. We were running a higher number. Paultin, he was always been kind of a better performer in the super secret DPS club. So yeah, charismatic. That's it, folks. Super simple kit. Again, it's one of those things where the champions with at least these first 2 champions had super simple kits. There wasn't a lot that they were getting upgrades to, and so they ended up eventually with more of these self-damage upgrades. His self-damage upgrade, only E16 at this point. Paultin's was E20. But still, with the amount of actual upgrades compared to his base, it ends up being real strong. Whatever reason, as you can see, we're in 180s now. Buff, the self buff coming in real big there. That's something that Paultin can't provide, right? He doesn't really have, again, he doesn't have feats that support this so much. The extra dagger feat is great. Everything else just goes into natural performer, so he buffs himself with this. Doesn't matter if you do a natural performer or ricochet, it all feeds into the same thing. Got the centaur feed in? Sure, why not? It'd probably be better to have doing some things with species the other day. The 80% ones along with another 40, and it doesn't matter which 40. It could be either this one or this one. They do this. They buff the same ability, or this one. Oh, this is the chance of them ricocheting. Oh, yeah, I have that in. Yeah, chance of daggers ricocheting is good, so that you get the base trigger. That's what you want. And then you do like a pair of whatever the height. Real straightforward. They're a member of Force Grey, but that doesn't matter. This affiliation doesn't really feed into itself at all. Like, they don't have any affiliation-based abilities. Yeah. And there's they don't really align well. I think it comes down to the fact that, like, Archon and Tyrell can be the tanks. Tyrell can be a support. But if Archon's tanking, he buffs evil champions, and Jamila would be the DPS, and Jamila isn't evil, and it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. But that's it. I mean, again, there's not a whole lot of, we're up to 200s now. Not a whole lot going on that, like, makes this something too outrageous. We only have 1 more upgrade, so yeah, he just really outperforms. All right, let's talk about Penelope. This is going to be a quick show, folks. A quick show. Again, Penelope comes to us from the Here's the Plains. This is a completed affiliation. They do have affiliation bonuses, but again, they're all built around Alindra. Alindra holds them all. She's the keeper of the buffs for the affiliation. Penelope isn't a DPS, so it doesn't matter. Like, if you try to get an affiliation buff or add more, like, again, these are all very like support agnostic champions, in the sense that they don't really need anything specific to make them function as a super secret DPS, which might be why they are super secret DPS. They're just naturally solid in terms of punching people in the face, which is odd, again, for support champions. So the base attack here is go away. Penelope jumps out and hits the closest enemy with her quarterstaff, dealing damage and knocking it back slightly. It's just really just swings like a baseball bat. Bonks things on the head. When she attacks an enemy and doesn't kill it, which is normally the case because she's a support, they get debuffed for 30 seconds and everyone deals more damage to them. So it's not like they built this is great, but it's not like they built her own damage support or anything. This is for everyone, right? Insect Plague creates these swarms that slows people and applies the debuff when they walk into it, which is great. Joinka Mask, she heals people who have the healing role. Basically, it's an adjacency thing, and then tools for the job is like other roles, and it increases damage of all champions for each champion affected by the charm. Stacks multiplicatively. Again, nothing that really focuses on her. But it does because it increases damage of all champions and not affected champions. She self-buffs, basically, right? So 2 out of the 3 of the Super Secret DPS Club are self-buffers, and it kind of makes sense why they might end up as being a Super Secret DPS. Paultin has just always been the outlier. Like if he got his buff, it might make some sense, but it doesn't. It doesn't. Spec choices are built around some scaling. Again, it's buffing it's buffing her debuff, and again, nothing that would really necessarily help her out. Her original kit actually had a spec choice where it bonked it, like she got a bigger knockback on her hit and stuff, and that was almost the DPS spec of choice. But the new reworked Penelope, it has nothing whatsoever to do with it. You can kill things with splitting the hive. It's actually a DPS spec in a sense, where when these go disperse, they become smaller ones that do bud based damage. But remember, if she's the DPS, she's the one setting the bud, right? So even then, it's kind of a damage of portion. Usually, you don't need it. You don't really just go with whatever feels good. Whatever the numbers are, because it's not what's making her do damage. Not what making her do damage. You could see her self DPS E12, like it feels small. You got to understand though, these numbers, it's always going to be small based off the seat they're in. So like Paultin's was E20, and that's because he's in seat 4, so his damage scaling starts at a smaller amount. Has to get buffed higher. Hitch is in 8. So his doesn't have to scale as hard to get similar or even better numbers. Same for Penelope. Even with this E12, she starts off with a much higher base DPS because of the seed. So when comparing self DPS numbers, just understand that it doesn't really mean anything unless you're looking at the actual damage values, which have to be stripped out of the game to understand. Feat wise, oh wait, was that everything? Story time, that's a gold find again, so that doesn't matter. Yeah, based off party members adjacent to her attacking. Feats, she has nothing that's like self damage again because she's not a DPS. So again, there's nothing about her kit, feats or anything that would imply she could do lots of damage, and yet she can. Hitch, obviously the big. I mean, Hitch is still. I should have done Hitch last. He just outperforms everybody. So she's in the 168s around her feet, which is not always an accurate number, but it's something we can look at the moment. If we look at Paultin's 168 as well, right? Then we throw in Hitch 183 before any of his buffs start kicking in. It will go up as he starts bouncing his ricochet around. But that's it, folks. Again, it kind of comes down to formation building, but you can honestly build a formation with anyone as your DPS. There are times where one of your supports might steal it, but they don't have to have the DPS tag. There are people who have heard rumors. There's a rumor. There's somebody, I'm pretty sure it's confirmed, that someone is a Tatiana DPS main. Tatiana is a tank support speed. They just decided they like Tatiana, so they're gonna do the damages with them, or try to. This game is really flexible in that way, and that you can kind of build formations about anybody, but as long as you can focus the buffs correctly, and you're not using an actual DPS champion, unless they're really away from where the buffs are. And that's something that can help you, this kind of stuff. It can help you with your patron challenges. Like, I like to come in here each week and I look at, like, okay, who is supposed to be setting Bud? And like, so for Mert this week, for me, it was Dritz. But then there was Makos, Krond, and Viconia. Krond is a DPS, right? I like to try to do all 4 of these in one formation. Right? So I just went, if I build this, I would have Makos in the back with Krond next to them, so not getting Makos' buff. And then Dritz getting Makos' buff and Viconia's buff. I don't even think he can get Viconia's buff. But the point is, ultimately, you can place it so you can build your formations around, if the scaling works well, around getting very specific people at setting your Bud. So Minsk DPS was, or Minsk Bud was here for Vajra, along with Barrow and Penelope and Fen. Fen is a DPS / support. This can work. Depends on your gear, but this can work to get both of those at once. I think that was a little hard for me because of my gear on Fen. So this is something to keep in mind when you're doing, you can do just kind of focused building of your formation and pointing your buffs when you're trying to do your patron challenges as well. And it makes it easier so you can knock both of those named champion type things out at once. Because those are usually, at least one of those is usually pretty large. So getting them both taken care of with the same formation is nice. Folks, if you have questions, please put question : in front of them. We only have one. We have one question so far this episode, and I think it's because everybody's just in shock. The questions I've seen do not have a question : in front of them. Yeah. I see a comment here I'm going to address. I already addressed this once. I'm going to address it again. Having a DPS tag enables Valentine's sharing. Sure. But we're literally talking about champions who don't have a DPS tag. That's what the super secret DPS squad is about. It's literally just these. It's these champions who are supports. Support gold. Support. Healing, support, gold, debuff. None of them have a DPS tag, so you can't transfer it. So, yeah. This is it, folks. This is the super exciting, super secret DPS club. Can you potentially do this with other DPS? Sure. I saw some people talking about Imoen. Let's throw Imoen in here. Imoen is one of the heroes of Baldur's Gate. This affiliation is really kind of what I refer to as a shotgun affiliation. Like, it's anyone and everyone that's associated with Baldur's Gate in video games and comic books. It started out as just the comic. Specifically about the comic book Heroes of Baldur's Gate. And now it's just become a catch-all. But Imoen, healing support. She buffs adjacent champions. You know, again, this is kind of one of those things where it shouldn't work. But she can create favored foes. So like if we create beast favored foes, she starts dealing Bud-based damage. But again, if she's the DPS, she's the one setting Bud, right? So it's not like that should be an incredible amount. Yeah, nothing here really focuses on her. So could you do it? Sure. The question, as always, is should you? And it just may be one of those situations where that's all you have. Again, there are variants in this game where you can't use a DPS at all. Like, you can't use anybody that has a DPS tag. Now, yes, there's ways to get around that. I'm well aware. You don't need to teach me how to play this game. I've been playing for 7 years. I've been playing it for 7 years. These are tools for a toolbox. There's a DPS that can go anywhere, so you could always use him if you have him. There's party crashers. There's so he's a party crasher. There's party buses, champions who can bring other DPS in. But it's important. Again, I think it's important to understand the things you can do with this game, and understand that just because you can do them doesn't mean you should. But when you get in a pinch, this is information that can help you complete stuff that you might not normally have been able to complete. It can also answer questions for you, like, I built this formation and my Hitch or Penelope or Paultin for some reason are setting Bud. What did I do wrong? It's not necessarily you. You can fix it, but it wasn't necessarily you. You were probably building a formation in good faith, and you just happened to throw in a member of the super secret DPS club. That's just kind of how things work sometimes in this game. So that's it. We're gonna take a short musical and we'll take our break early. The song for today is Deal Me In. It's Hitch's song. I'm gonna come back and we'll dive into questions. And if we don't have a lot of questions, you know what, we'll talk about Halson. I'll even bring that blog up in the meantime and try to get it working on my backup computer so you can see it. Because Halson's looking hot. And I don't just mean the art. We'll be right back, folks.
Started on the wrong foot, on the wrong side of the wagon tracks. The only place I've gone home is the place I'm never going back. Headed down the circles with my dreams out trying to pin my path. Oh, gotta buy my empty pockets, aimless but forever free. Made my way to Waterdeep, got a job place right in front of me. New friends by my side, we ride toward our destiny. Oh, oh, oh. Ventured out into the jungle, hunting for an ancient city, tracking down a Chelton cultist, listening to pirate ditties, fought away from zombie hordes, it's sure wild and video. Life's better with your friends, living on the edge of danger. I wanted my life at home, with everyone a stranger. I'm only happy when I roam. My life's my biggest wager. Oh, 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 deal me in, shovel the dam. Deal me in, I got your man. Going all in, risk it all. No matter.
I'm always happy when I get to play that one. It's a good one. That one came out. It was one of those where when we as chat were writing it, with the aid of Dylan and Jason, the bard and the scribe, it really didn't come together until somebody came up with Deal Me In. Like, that wasn't even, it didn't even start with that. It started with other things, and someone came up with the line, Deal Me In, and like, that just, everything clicked. So good. So good. Yeah, folks, if you didn't know, and you might be people new to the game, these games that are in the jukebox, or these songs, excuse me, they're in the jukebox, were written on a stream called Bardic Inspiration, by chat. Chat room. They were all done in 2 hours or less. There's a lot more. I got a guide for that. Got all the acoustics. Why I play the acoustics, because we don't have all the acoustics in there. We don't have all the songs in the game. Good stuff. All right, let's hit up these questions. I don't know that there are any questions that are on topic, but if there are, we'll hit them, because, like, I mean, it's a fun topic, and so I threw it out there as a suggestion. And Dylan was like, "Oh, let's do it." Electric. Oogie, 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 oogie. Do these secret DPS champs make them OP support champs? Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, I know. Utterly and completely unrelated. Utterly and completely unrelated. I would say Penelope is really strong, but that has nothing to do with her being a super secret DPS. So, utterly and completely unrelated. And again, you know, this isn't, as I said, this isn't every DPS, super secret DPS champ. These are just kind of, this is the kind of the original trio. More of, you know, again, there's situations where you can throw some others in and things end up getting a little wild. It's just rare that you would ever try to do it on purpose. You just might be forced into it. Let's see, anything else even remotely related to this? Zoldon, why isn't Orkira part of the Secret DPS club? After all, Bud's buggy. I literally talked about that. You weren't here. Why weren't you here? I had a whole segment on that. Or Bud's buggy is a bug. The super secret DPS club has nothing to do with a bug. So it's Orkira and Freely really trigger Bud's buggy. I talked about them. Literally right at the start. Kamui, do you have a DPS main? I do. It's Karlach. I love Karlach. Karlach is bae. So for my account, I build as much as possible. I try to build around Karlach. That doesn't mean she can't be used everywhere, but that's okay. I don't have a problem with that in this game. I've got a lot of champions developed. I can switch to somebody else, but she's the one that I love the most and love to put as my DPS bash stuff with. Let's just go hit all of them now. Juliet, Papa Oscar, JPO, 5134. I do know that. Brand new, less than 10 hours. Welcome to the game and the community. What should I be focusing on? Main quest lines? Familiars? Oh, boy, did you come to the right place. Somebody already probably linked this to you, but I'm going to hit the command in chat anyway. I have a guide out there called the New Player Reference, aka a guided tour. It exists literally to give you direction for brand new players, or returning players, or even people who just haven't done all the things that's listed in that reference. It is basically a milestone-based progression system that I came up with, based off years of experience playing this game and making guides for it. And then I intersperse other guides in there to help give you foundational information as you go along. So, because there's a lot to learn about this game. This game there's a lot going on. It's deeper than people realize. I have over 180 guides for the game, active guides for the game, up on the Idle Champions subreddit. And that links to a lot of them. And there's even a link in there to all of the guides if you need it, but it calls out the kind of the primary stuff. So that's kind of where I'd start. But you know, TLDR, you know, yeah, you want to start off like in Sword Coast just to give you some initial instruction. You start off in Sword Coast, you're going to do, you know, the storyline adventures. That's what I call these top level adventures. When you complete those, variants show up. I highly recommend ignoring those. When you get down here, you're going to have to do some, and my guide points out which ones are easiest. I'm going to tell you right now, maybe just avoid Arya Chicken. It's the first variant in the game, but it's in the name. This is like they're daring you to do something, and they teach you a painful lesson if you just hop into this and you don't have a lot of favor at the top right, to help you overpower your way through it. So yeah, stick to like the top levels. Come down here, do the top levels through like Underdeep Cartography, and then you do this variant. This variant actually as a reward. Overdue Rendezvous rewards you with Dritz Doerden, another evergreen champion. That's a DPS for your party, kind of famous. But then and then you can bounce over to Tomb of Annihilation and you start doing stuff there, and you just kind of, you go from campaign to campaign to campaign, you bounce around a little bit, you grab all kinds of power and experience and stuff. Yeah, but that guide is literally designed to kind of hold your hand if you want, to walk alongside you and sometimes carry you. As from a brand new player, until you have 2 feet firmly planted into what I consider the mid game. I think there's new players there, or let's say brand new player, early game, mid game, late game, and end game, and they're defined by kind of progress through completing certain tasks. They also have certain power levels associated with them, but those aren't the definitions. That just happens to be a thing, because you can get your power levels out of whack with cash. Shevik, personal question. How are your tech problems? Pretty personal. No, they're like they're persisting. They are persistent. You know, I think we've got them sorted here for today. But I am on my backup computer. I basically took, I had a like, cooling system issue, liquid cooling on my main computer, and I'm not even gonna go into it. It's a whole long thing. Let's just say it was a pre-built. It's something I had like custom made for me. Thanks to my community that won me a bunch of money towards a custom made computer. So I invested in a nice computer, and I went with liquid cooling because I'd never had it before, and the company did not set the software up right so that it was actually working correctly, and I did not know that for a couple of years. So I kind of fixed, did some fixes in the meantime when we found out that problem, and then I went to do a flush of the system, and everything got like 2 weeks ago, and everything got worse, and I was like, okay, it's time to. I knew I'd have to do a bigger fix. Now I have. So I took everything apart, flushed, cleaned out all the radiators, and replaced all the hoses, the tubing. Tried to clean the water blocks. The one for my GPU looks good enough, but the one for my CPU basically had to throw it away. There was no cleaning it. I tried repeatedly, so I had to order a new one. So I'm waiting on parts, and then everything will go back together again. But everything has been rewired and ready for the CPU cooler, and I need thermal paste. I didn't have any thermal paste. I need the thermal paste to put the GPU stuff back together. Really. Yeah. That'll be the last thing. And then I'll be able to put it all together, throw coolant in it that I've got sitting here waiting, and see if that helps. It really should. It really should be so much better. Good Lord. It was a nightmare. I'll end up. I took a couple pictures. They will scare people. I haven't posted them in my Discord yet. But yeah, so my community over my Discord will see it at some point. It scares the heck out of me. So far, knock on wood, hasn't been an outrageously expensive process, but it could get real bad if the GPU cooler ends up not. It was usually. Well, we'll find out. There's no replacing that. It's for a 3070. There's only replacing GPU. They don't make that. I don't think they make that cooler anymore. They've moved on to the 40s series. Maximum Taco Lore. Let's get back to Idle Champions. Although this is relevant. Because my game plays vastly differently on this backup computer than it does on my main. Maximum Taco Lord. I'm having a burrito for lunch. So that's making me hungry. I've received most of the Elminster qualifying epic gear. Oh. Okay. Is his currency just for item levels weeklies after that, or should I save it for something? Oh, I see what I was like, what are we talking about? You mean you've bought lots of patron chests and opened them, and everybody that qualifies for Elminster has their epics. I mean, if you've bought the permanent goodies, which I haven't yet, because I just haven't done a lot of Elminster. You know, if you bought like the permanent goodies, I've bought some, but not all. Yeah. Bling. Okay. Sorry. Trying to keep up on the feats. Like I have a lot of permanent goodies to go. I haven't even unlocked the influence for all of them yet. You know, if you've bought them all, or you know, can you get this one? Right. If you've bought them all, then at that point, your currency is for, if you want a time gate piece each week, your Modron component chest each week for sure. As you can see, I've got it hidden, but yeah, I buy that every week from all my patrons. That's just always going to be a thing that you buy every week because you always need more pipes. Even if you've got all of your cores supercharged, you still are always going to want more pipes because at some point they will start adding more cores to the game again. They just don't know how to deliver those yet. Yeah, that's really it. You know, if you've got excess above, you know, the 5,000 or 7,500 a week, if you're going to buy the time gate piece with it, then sure, you can dump excess into an occasional patron chest. Because remember, they're dropping new champions all the time. You know, if you don't get full epic off the event, which you're that deep into Elminster, you should be. Feels like. Then you can always assist that with that. But yeah, otherwise, then it's providing item levels. Yeah. That's what most of the game is. I mean, Elminster is the late game / end game patron. So once you max that out, I mean, you're at a point where item levels are the thing you're really gaining progress with in the game. I mean, that's the whole function of gem farming, really. Well, not the whole function. It helps you fully epic all the new champions too, but it's the biggest one is item levels. Shiny 177. I'm in the mid game, still trying to collect more champions, but it'll happen for a while. Unlock Zerial as a patron, but not Elminster. Don't worry about Zerial is the kind of the last patron into the mid game, and Elminster is late game again. Just with the fact that you have to have 100 champions alone to get into Elminster. But even beyond that, his minimum area completion goal is 825. So, and his restrictions, you know, it's newer champions, which is fine, honestly, in my opinion, because the newer champions have come in beefy. So I don't have an issue with that at all. But yeah, he's more of you got to do some work. So yeah, don't worry about that. And don't rush towards that. You'll come to it naturally and it'll be fine. In the recent natural time gate, this weekend, I was given the option of Astarion, which I already have. I ended up choosing Merowyn for her gold and neutral buffs. Nice. When would it make sense to choose Astarion to get more item levels? In general terms, how useful is it to get more item levels? Just item levels, if that's all you care about. Like, say your Astarion's full epic. Time gates aren't Like that's to me, that's once you've got all the champions. That's what time gates become, is item. Before that, you're going to get blacksmithing contracts. From, you know, you take your gems, you buy gem chests with your gems, you open the chests, you get blacksmithing. Specifically buy gold chests personally, but some people choose silver. You make your own decisions. And these are where you're going to get item level, right? Yeah. Like time gate is a natural time gate weekend for those of you who don't know. Use this as a nice reminder. Free time gate weekend, so you don't have to spend your pizza pieces up here. You can just pick one of these 3 that they're offering. Wow, they gave me Minthara. So fresh and so clean. You just got her. You know, at a certain point, like where I am, I own all the champions. They all have legendary gear. So when I'm making my decisions, I go with whoever has the lowest item levels, and I just throw a hand. You get like a handful. This is why I say it's not really great, because you get like a handful of levels. It feels like it doesn't feel like it's significant when you've got people who have hundreds. And you know, so I'll pick Zorbu because he's got the lowest item levels out of that group. But usually you want to pick you know, a new champion useful to you. Now, in the mid game, once you've got Zariel and you're just and Elminster is a long ways off, that's a time where maybe you're not going to make a pick necessarily for item levels, but you might make a pick for gear. So maybe your champion is still in a mix of blues and purples, and it's someone that you really use, like Astarion. Astarion can be super strong, both with item levels and gear. So their Ceramorphosis is an epic you want. It's their slot 2. And their Generational Wealth ability is an epic you want. That's their slot 3. So if you didn't have these, then there is, once you're in the mid game, you've got Zariel, and it's a long haul to Elminster, and it'll happen whenever it happens. You've got to split the parties done by that point. Yeah, you could time gate in a natural time gate. You could pick just to try to hunt down one of these 2 epics, or both of them. The others are, you know, they're fine. They're not amazing. These are the 2 that, you know, like Ceramorphosis is the pre-stack one. I call it mathematically overpowered ability. Mop. Other people call it pre-stack. Yeah, whatever. Same thing. 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other. And then the gold find. Gold is always great, right? So there's situations where, you know, you might want to get gear for a really strong champion. If you don't have it already, that might be a choice. But if it's just item levels, I don't know that it's worth item levels. I'd rather get a new champion, personally. But, you know, go in with that kind of information and make your choice. Just, you know, make an informed decision, and that means it's right for you. Moses Karada, have received confirmation of next event's augments carrying the gem boon forward too. So let's go over the augment blog. For those of you who didn't know, it dropped this week. So the Simral augments, refreshing boons is returning. Refreshing boons is the one that really just does need to be made permanent. Basically, boons obtained during the event last for 21 days instead of to the end of the event. And if you get a new boon at any point in the event, even up to the last second of the event, it refreshes that 21-day timer for all of your boons. The only thing it doesn't do is unlock the supporter slot. So the question here is about the second augment, which is returning augment, boon enhancement of the gem drop boon, which increases the gems you earn as an added boon. I didn't hear anything on Dev Insights about this. No one asked this question. Presumption based off past events is the second this event ends, that boon goes away. That's my presumption. You would carry all the others forward. You will need, that's something that's going to have to be asked of the devs, though. That's not information that I know for sure. But based off how past events have worked, I would say it's just going to drop. Because it's associated, that augment is associated with the event. So they tend to just go away once they're done. Refreshing boons is the only one that seems to, like, it's built to linger. It's the cranberry boon. It's built to linger. The others tend to be built to just end. The other two augments, Worth the Wait is returning. People have a love-hate relationship with this. I love to watch people hate it. That's what that means. But basically, Stokey's going to unlock in week 2. But that's not this boon doesn't make Stokey unlock in week 2. They were going to put Stokey in week 2 anyway. They're just giving you double chests. And then another one that I want to be permanent, because it is so very impactful for new players, early game players, mid game players. I've seen some late game players go, "Oh, I don't care about this. This is pointless." And I'm like, "Ooh, you're a part of the 0.001% if you don't care about this." Because I love it and I'm late game. But event champions whose recruitment, adventure, or variants you complete. So when you do a variant for an event champion that you unlock, you get a common rarity gear in all slots. So it's a mix of the old auto blacksmith and auto gear, but basically you're guaranteed to have white gear everywhere. So you instantly fill in whites across the board. If you don't already have better. So like if it isn't someone you're reflexing. And every tier 2 and higher event variant you complete automatically gives you 100 item levels distributed across that equipment. This one's so big, folks. So if you complete tier 2, that's 300 item levels across 6 pieces of gears, which means you get an average item level of 50 plus without even opening up any chest. If you complete tier 3, that takes you to 100. You complete tier 4, that's 150 worth, right? I want this to be permanent, and I love this so much because it is the only thing in the game that really demonstrates to a new player how powerful adding item levels to items is. It is such a big deal, and it's usually something that players don't understand until they interact with the community. And the community points out, "Oh no, you want item levels on your gear." Right? Because usually you can come out of an event, even if you come out like in blues and cut 1 or 2 purples out of an event, your item levels are maybe like 8 to 12, like average item levels. People don't understand that 50 is a big deal, that 100 is huge, and that some champions going well above that can just destroy the game. I want this. I want this all the time. I love it. Let us have good things. Let us have good things. Those are the augments coming for Simral. Remember, Simral is the December event. Starts in 4 days. Yeah. All right. Next question. Imhotep turned from their endless slumber in Tiamat. So in Trials of Mount Tiamat, if you end up with a few teammates that don't contribute or don't appear to contribute, we've had this conversation. I'm not going to get into it again, but you don't know until it's over. There's a bug. Yeah, it can show 0. You don't know until it's over if you do it or not. How do you deal with the lack of DPS? Here is my recommendation for Trials of Mount Tiamat. Go in and just do the best job you can do. That's really what Trials is about. Go in and perform to the best of your account's current capabilities. Do that, and then on day 1, set the highest contribution you can get on day 1, like get the highest bud values. Basically, you get on day 1. That's the day that you go hard or go home. And then on day 2 and beyond, just make sure you're doing your best to complete each daily requirement beyond that. That's literally all you can do, and that's a lot. Look, if everyone that's done Trials knows and tell you, and even you would agree that someone just showing up and trying to do their best and then completing as many of the dailies as they can, that's a big deal. It's a big deal, right? I mean, that's ultimately what we're talking about here. But just understand that there are bugs in this game that one shows DPS contribution is 0 until you get to the finale screen, and it stems out of like if that person wasn't able to contribute on day 1, for whatever reason. But then day 2 kicked in and they could do day 2 and onward and blew it away. They still show up as 0 the whole time until you get to the final tally screen, and then it shows that they've actually done something. So one, don't trust that a 0 is a 0. The actual damage that you're doing is going to show up correctly, like that your whole party, even if they show 0, shows up in the assault party total at the bottom right. And the game may screw up the totals that everybody else is doing to make that number seem right. It's weird. Like that Trials has bugs. 2, there's a bug that when you go to start a trial, like you join a trial, you have every intention at day 1 to join it, you smash that start button and nothing happens. Sometimes it'll clear with a restart, sometimes it won't. So people who wanted to do it don't get to. Sometimes life happens. I had a tree fall in my house last year. Guess who couldn't do their trials for 5-6 days because the power was out. Right? And yeah, there may be, you know, one of the things that could happen is they just join and they don't want to do it. Only 1 out of 4. So just focus on trying to do the best you can. It helps if everybody else in that situation, you know, does what the best that they can too. Eventually progressing your account, you know, is going to be helpful. I mean, you know, you're in there, you're trying to not only get legendaries, but then level them up, like get the scales to level them up. Make sure you're focusing that power and leveling those legendaries up on the team that you're using in trials. They're teams that you're using in trials because there's probably lots of swaps. Yeah, because I'm at the point now. I'm in a pre-made, but I've pugged it occasionally. I'm in tier 10. 4 of us can do it just fine. Like if our 5th can't make it, or someone shows up and they just can't really contribute that week, then the 4 of us are. You can have 4 people and you can finish tier 10, and it's even easier at the lower end. Like coming on the way all the way up, like yeah, you don't necessarily need everybody. It's better if you've got 4 people doing it. 3 is rough. But yeah, you just gotta do the best job you can. Do you receive the same amount of scales irresponsible of actually? Uh-oh. Why did everything just disappear on my screen? That was real weird, folks. Tech issues. Do you? I think we're okay. I don't know what just happened. Do you receive the same amount of scales irrespective of actually completing any of the daily missions? If the trial is completed, yes. Yes. Maybe that should be changed a bit to incentivize people to cooperate. No. No disruptions. Thank you, Jay. This is the... So first off, this is the second iteration of Trials. Already. We're already in Trials kind of 2.0. Trials and the Forge, I should say, 2.0. When it first came out, the music disappeared. Oh, hold on. That is odd. Why would that? Huh. I don't know. It's not restarting. All right. Well, background music's done. When Trials, so this is history time, I guess, because you know context matters times for these questions, even though some people don't like it. When Trials first came out, the biggest complaint at the time was kind of what you're talking about. Man, people don't contribute, and it was a consistent complaint. And everybody had their torches and their pitchforks, and everybody wanted people punished. CNE, the devs, decided to listen and to punish. And their punishment, first off, we'll get to this. Their punishment was if you don't contribute in a trial, you don't get to advance to the next higher tier. That was their punishment. It hasn't changed anything that I am aware of. I mean, I don't know if they have tracking on that, but we still have those complaints. Those complaints never went away. Why didn't they go away? Because punishing someone, like, first off, if the minimum bar is just, well, if anybody has 0 DPS, you don't move up. Well, if somebody wants to freeload, they just hop into a free play, get 1 DPS, and hop out. I mean, you'll get more than that, obviously. I know this, but example, get 1 DPS, hop out, and then you get to move it, and then you get to advance. Right? It's very clear that someone's giving you the finger in that situation. To be clear, right? But then it also doesn't do anything like if you're at tier 10. If you've already been carried to tier 10, it doesn't matter, right? So that was never really that fix was never really going to do anything. And B, punishment isn't the best way to deal with this situation. Like people talk about, people like to break it down to like carrot and a stick, right? Carrot is the better way to go. Carrot, motivate people to participate. Because you can punish people all day long and they just won't care. But after a certain period of time, it's gonna be like, I don't care. Why would I care? And if you start setting like, okay, well, you've got to contribute a minimum amount of DPS. Well, how do you set the minimum? Like, is it that you just have to complete a single day? Because then that'll just be the bar, and they'll do that, and then they'll stop. Right? Like, there isn't necessarily, with the way trials exist currently, there isn't necessarily a way to resolve that via some kind of punishment. Now, are there good ways to create like kind of incentivization rewards with watermarks, like high watermarks you have to reach to do so? Sure. Yeah, I play other games. I've played other game. I play another game currently that has something like that, where if you don't reach a minimum threshold, you don't get anything, but you contribute to the overall participation, right? And it can be problematic. It can be a little problematic. I would rather they incentivize people to complete things, to participate, as opposed to punish people for not participating. And there's ways to do that. I'm not going to go into that because it doesn't matter what my ideas are. Ultimately, what matters is when they go and sit down to rework trials and the Forge, and they have plans to do this in the future. They just aren't concrete on when. It is my hope that they take a better approach, to a more positive approach to encouraging people to participate instead of just punishing people for not, or for bugs that are outside of their control. It sucks to be punished for a bug that's not your fault. And that's my big reason for not liking punishment-based systems. But yeah, I think if you're just focusing on, I mean, I ran into it a couple times, pugging my way up. But usually it was fine. Again, I think through the lower tiers and even in the mid tiers, you can be totally fine. Part of the issue is the design. The design of the system, they were smart in the sense that they gave you a percentage-based reward. So if you weren't able to 100% Tiamat and you 80%ed her, you got 80% of the scales and all of the chests. You get the chests no matter, even if you completely fail. But you got 80% of the scales as a reward. That was incredibly smart and would have solved most of the problem. And people would still feel bad they didn't get 100%. But hey, at least you'd get 80. Except they also added a completion reward. So it's like you get 50% more if you actually 100% it. That's actually the kick in the head that hurts. Because it's a lot. I mean, 50% is a lot more. If they just left it at, hey, you get a percentage, and just raised the total if they wanted that, great. But the reward for completing it is actually a bigger punishment when you don't, and that's part of it. There's a lot going on with trials. Again, they've talked about, they have plans to change trials in the Forge in the future. It's just the next system that we're getting, that we know of, is a new system called Apothecary/Notary. Q1 of 2025. We can cross our fingers that trials in the Forge get worked on next year, but we don't know yet, right? Orange Cores, what makes the late game fun for you? Haven't you done it all? I have not done it all. In fact, if we look at my patron completion, I've only done 17 of Elminster's patron variants. 343 over here, 268, 277, 334. You notice the totals are in the 400s. I will go do them all. I did complete all the content at one point, and then I stopped. But they kept adding more. But I like playing with the new characters. I like the new, adventures, and I do like going out and doing variants. There's just a lot, and it's super time consuming. And right now I'm all about that gem farm. E2 Crifty, anybody know a good support evil character? Wow, there's some contradictions there. But I think what you want is a well-performing evil support, right? The champion search is your friend here. If you didn't see how I did that, it's the little swippy swappy button on any of the portraits, and then the blue search button. Come over here. I unclick show recallable because it works backwards. And when it's checked, it isn't showing them. And when it's unchecked, it is. If you want to find evil supports, we can go to role and we can click support. And then we can go to alignment. We can click evil, right? And then we can see a bunch of them here. Now, this doesn't tell you if they're any good or not. I just want you to understand how you can find some. And then I'm gonna explain some. Let's go slot by slot. Voronika is pretty cool. She just got a rework. So in seat 1, I would choose Voronika over Saspia personally. Just know she needs a time investment in a run to get really strong. All three of these are solid options in seat 2. Lae'zel is strong, a member of Absolute Adversaries. Blushi is a tank that can get really strong. She's one of those where you have to have her in at area 1 and then keep her alive as long as possible. It affects her strength. BBG, Minthara, and Spurt, all big deals. C3 is rocking. Now, BBG is limited to, I think, intelligence of like 10 or less or something, or 12 or less, or somewhere around there. I think it was a feat that changes it around. So, not the smartest champions, but solid buffs. Minthara just came into the game, tank support. Her debuff is the big deal, in my opinion. And can be used in any kind of formation, even if you're not using it with Absolute Adversaries. Spurt is strong, and with item levels can become the strongest. At some point, they got to cap that boy. So I don't have a ton into him. He's not going to be the strongest little boy in the world without like thousands of item levels on this item. Baloth, solid. Biconia, she can deliver. Baloth's better. Ben, real strong. Krull, honestly, one of the best ultimates in the game for killing armored enemies, and has really strong debuff. And can give you lots of gold too. So kind of a combo. Ben Ursa's strong. Human is solid. Most people use Human for speed, but if you change their placement in the formation, they can actually be a support buffer as well. Lazaps is an evil tank, but really just for short DPS. I'll be clear. Makos, okay, as a support, okay, as a DPS. If you pair them with Sergeant Nox, they become solid, but if we're just talking about standing on their own. Aeon, solid, but really wants to do patron variants. Their whole focus, their whole niche is patron variants. Astarion, super strong, regardless of pairing them with their affiliation. Super strong, buffer and gold find. Beauregard's useful in specific scenarios. Warden now has got improvements. They're better as a support. I still don't like them as a DPS, but man, support debuff. Miria, real strong. She's tanking and support, but you don't necessarily have to put her in the tank spot. But she reduces damage for people who are in the front column. Has like a ramping buff. The further you can go, the bigger it gets. It's pretty solid. So yeah, there's your options. Yeah, I think there's a lot of we're getting a lot more of the strong support, evil support. It takes a while because they kind of have to be like most of them are I feel like most of them are C&E originals. They're not necessarily characters from shows. Some are, but people don't generally play evil characters on streams. Yeah. But Krull debuffs, not buffs. It doesn't matter. Unless they specifically just want a buffer. They just said good support evil character. They didn't say buffer. You gotta remember, equal numbers, buff and debuff. Same thing. It's just a debuff is applied to a specific enemy instead of just buffing a general characters. Now, obviously, this is different for like if you're pairing with with certain champions who want positional formation abilities and they blah blah. Yeah, that's not what they. Bash Tank TV. I've never done a time gate before, but I see there's a free weekend one at the moment, and you have Finn, Sisaspi, and Rust. This is time gates are unique to each player. Do I get to choose to unlock one of these champions for free? Yes. How difficult is it? Super easy. Super easy. Yeah. And your choice, if you're newer, since you haven't done one before, I mean, people are going to chime in with, who they think is strong or whatever. But when you're new, what you want to try to do with your time gates is choose a champion that's in a seat where you only have one other champion, right? If you only have one other champion, you're trying to get to 2 champions in every seat, right? So a total of 24, but 2 in each seat, because that unlocks an adventure called Split the Party that will get you your first background party and your first Modron core. Those are big progression deals, far more important early on than just trying to pick the strongest champion at a time in the game where you're not going to have amazing gear and you're not going to have lots of item levels. That isn't as important. Getting these extra parties and getting going. So Rust for you only have 2 champions in that seat. Grab it. Grab Rust. And Rust can be real strong. Rust is a gold find and buffer. Yeah, they're gonna be strong for you. They may get a nerf. We've heard there may be a nerf soon to Rust, but don't fret. Those are still gonna be good for you. And a second question, just to add on a previous question, it says item level 50 and 7, or it says level 50 and 75. These are your goals. Here, I'm gonna open up my time gate so I can demonstrate this. So if I pick mine says 50 and 75 here, some of mine might show higher. And the reason for this is when you select someone in a time gate, it bumps these area goals up by 50. So what this is first adventure area 50 is the requirement that you have to complete. Second adventure area 75. There's a variant. There's one variant. It's not an adventure. It's a variant. You get in here, I'll point it out. Over here, it's one of the random ones that they come with an event. Each champion has 3 variants. And the completion area is going to be based off whichever variant you get. If you hover over it, it says 175. So I have to go to 175. So 50 is going to get you the champion and a chest. You don't own them. Gold chest. 75, then you complete it. You do the next one. 70. Well, you don't want to go further than 50. You want to get some favor. Here, it's going to start off at 0 because that's what's going to help you get to here. Do the same thing. Just go to 75, go further, get more favor, because you need to try to be able to get to 175 to get this last gold chest. Once you're done, you're out, in my opinion. Some people try to go further for silvers, but when you're new, that has a lot of meaning. It's not really worth. You don't get enough to worth it. Doll Z, what DPS would you say is the highest damage potential? Oh God. this isn't, I'm not upset with you, Dulzy. I get that people start this game and they want to ask this question because they think it's important. Because why wouldn't it be? So I'm going to preface the answer. There's going to be people that are going to chime in and chat. I'm going to preface the answer with something that I feel is important. You can play this game with just about any DPS champion you want. Now, the stronger they are, the easier it's going to be. But different champions have different kind of power curves, if you want to think about it. There's going to be different times where champions are powerful. Some champions are powerful early in their curve, like when you're a brand new player. Jarlax tends to be your starter DPS. But pretty quickly, once you get some favor, and it's favor-based for this change, Ashara then becomes your better DPS. And it's a function of favor, not necessarily. Gear can affect it too, but given equal gear, favor can make a change, right? So this is kind of early on. You learn that, the champion you're using may change for DPS based off their power curve. But there's also, like I said, there's early game, new player, mid game, late game, end game. There's champions that are better suited for some of these than others. And there are some, whereas in your question, like who has the highest damage potential, there are champions, the champions that have the highest damage potential are ones who are best suited for your progression in the late and end game, because they require epic gear. They require, not just on them, but on other champions, they require specific formations, like specific champions in the formation. They require thousands of item levels, average item, to reach their potential and start moving towards their highest potential. And if you're chiming in, if you're just trying to figure out, well, who should I start using right now, that may be a vastly different champion. In my opinion, it is a vastly different champion. So late game into end game, when you can afford to invest thousands of item levels into champion, Artemis is kind of one of the DPSs of choice. Warduke as I like to call him, is another. Cass is strong with item levels. Krond, strong with item levels. And what all these champions have in common is they have abilities that have some kind of stack involved, like of things that can stack up and you can get more and more and more of them, with multipliers that are big when you get a lot of them. And their item support and those item levels boost the pre-stack multiplier. These are the strongest type of abilities in the game. And they scale ridiculously when you can put thousands or tens of thousands of item levels on. That's not a thing you do as a new player or an early game player. Not even something you reach in the mid game, unless you just halt all your progress and focus only on that in the mid game. Early on, there's a lot of champions that scale really well and do well with blue gear, which is rare, instead of the purple epics and high item levels. You don't need tons of item levels. You can throw 50 item levels on them, and they do well. I use one personally, Karlach. Karlach scales well as a brand new player through the early game, mid game, and I use her in the late game. Does she have the highest potential? No. Can she wreck things? Yeah. Right, but that's one example. Crux is also an example here. There's a lot of examples of functional DPS that can work for you. Rosie Beestinger, Bobby, the Bonk Barian. There's a lot of potential champions in this game that you can do well with. Highest damage potential, they've got to have one of those. They've got to have what I call a mathematically overpowered ability. MOP. Other people call it a pre-stack ability, because it's all built around the idea that there's an ability that has stacks It has item support, and the item levels you punch into that, invest into it, can scale continuously forever because they're hitting the pre-stack multiplier. Those are always going to end up with unlimited item levels. Those are always going to be the most powerful champions. But you can't get unlimited item levels until at least the late game. Unless you halt all your progress. All right, shiny one. Is there any way to predict what natural time gates will be offered? No. It's not completely random. That was the other part of your question. But no, you can't predict what you're going to get. What they guarantee you, though, is a champion you don't own. Isn't necessarily a champion you want. Xander exists. But a champion you don't own. You're guaranteed a champion to go until you own them all. Yeah, that's there's buckets. There's 3 buckets there, and there's I think bucket 1 is year 1, and bucket 2 is year 2, or at least it used to be. And bucket 3 was all other years. That the time gates need a rework. That's a thing they're aware of as well. But you're guaranteed at least one champion you don't own. Arsenic, how do I get max stacks for Narak? You have to. It takes a dungeon master to do it actively. Because you have to run a perfect minigame, a perfect ultimate of Narak, and then hit Dungeon Master's ult, which would reset Narak's ult, and then do a perfect minigame again. They said they were going to fix this issue, and they have not. Shiny one, back again. Maybe for trials, the carrot can involve a percentage bonus based on your contribution level. It's not, I want to be very clear about this. It's not necessarily our job to come up with the answer. It's our job to give valid feedback. Just telling people to punish, here's the problem, and this is another thing. You have to translate as developers. You have to translate community sentiment into community statements into actual community sentiment. Punishing people that shouldn't. Community sentiment out of that you get from that is people are unhappy, very unhappy with the way some people aren't contributing. And then you have to translate that into a solution. And it's the developer's job to translate that, not ours. I theory craft that stuff over on my channel sometimes, but the problem when you start trying to come up with solutions is you start getting invested in the solution you like. And then when they fix the problem, even if it's a good way to fix it, you get upset because it wasn't your way. So I try not to get into that too much over here. Sometimes I do it on my channel, but I do that for fun because I like to theory craft stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of ways that could potentially solve this. Not our job to for them. It's just our job to tell them how we feel about stuff. And I'm not trying. I really mean this. I've worked. My history in games is I've made guides for games and fan sites and stuff for years. But then I started working in games. I worked in community management, everything from moderation up to basically a community lead, to taking in feedback and translating that and giving it to developers. And I've done that for everything from indie games, indie studios making their first game together as a studio, to a couple of the biggest names in the world in terms of games. And the one thing that holds true is what we value the most isn't pitchforks and ranting. It's just telling us your feelings and communicating them in clear ways without insults and all of the over the top stuff. But look, hey, this makes me feel bad when this happens. That's actually really valid feedback. That's valuable feedback. It's better feedback than this sucks. Whoever came up with this should be fired. That's useless. Like that kind of stuff. At every studio I've been in, that's the kind of stuff where you're like, when I first started, do you want this kind of stuff too? And they're like, no, that just gets filed under general dislike of this general unhappiness with this system, and that stuff gets tossed in the bin. Whereas posts that communicate good information about can break down exactly what feels bad and where and what feels good tends to be more valuable. So just kind of think about that when you're giving your feedback on the forum. Like Reddit is a great place to give feedback. As someone who managed communities, I preferred places like Reddit where I could easily link. I know now Discord you can create links, but it wasn't always the way. Discord was always the worst because basically a live chat and sifting through Discord to try to find stuff was always just whereas so a place like Reddit or official forums, fantastic. In this case, that's kind of Reddit or Steam. I tend to stay away from Steam, but that's me. Back to the questions. Tremarctos, do you actually read even once through the C&E Quest text journal? I used to when the game first came out, and then they gave us the ability to skip it, like to skip the text. Originally, when this game came out, there wasn't this option of where is it in the settings? Cinematic speed. It was always manual, or it was always on. No, it was always slowest, and you could click to make it go away faster. But no, nowadays I just play the game as an idle game. I play it in the background. I'm happy that they finally put the journal in. I haven't, so that you could go back and read the stories. I haven't had a chance to go catch up. I'm so far behind. But I read them all for a while. It is an idle game that stuff and move on, and I go do other things. 13 Orange, what's the strongest legendary effect generally speaking? Too situational. Because the strongest effects are situational. Because the strongest effect will be like specifically something for like a specific DPS that you're trying to build, like that buffs them or something. Yeah. For me, I try to aim for the most general buffs as possible. Like I like the all champ. I like the wait, do I have one around here? Yeah. Increase the damage of all. Oh no, that's each female. But it's just like increases the damage of all champions for each champion in the formation. I love those specifically because I don't want to be pigeonholed into a specific formations for the power that I have earned. I want it to just work all the time. So I prefer those, and when I do re-roll, when I do reforge, I try once a week. I try to reforge hopefully into one of those. But they are working. This is another thing. They are trying to change. One of the things they want to do with their trials and forgery work is change how legendary effects work. They actually want to decouple them from champions. Which, if done right, could make the game way better. Rough Rider. If Dritz got the Narak back treatment, why would he? He's a pure DPS. He doesn't have it. Yeah. Would he be the leader of the Companions of the Secret DPS Club? I don't think so, because he's not even a DPS support. 13 Arns again. How do I know what stage of the game's progression I'm at? Again, this is like, I have a different scale than some people might have. I have like brand new player. You know. Brand new player. Early game. Early game to me is you're doing like Sword Coast, the start of Sword Coast, Tomb, Waterdeep. You're doing base storyline adventures, just enough variance to get you whatever evergreens there are. You're trying to work towards Split the Party 1. You're trying to get your first Modron core, that kind of stuff, right? You're doing tier 1 in events, maybe some of tier 2. If you get real lucky, you might complete some of tier 3, but usually tier 1 to tier 2, that kind of stuff. Here, like mid game to me, and you can have a foot in each of these. You can be like a new player that's maybe doing some early game stuff, like maybe you're completing tier 2, right? Like you think of it as walking through progress. You could have 2 feet solidly in a place. You could be stepping forward, stepping back, like depending on what you're doing, right? Mid game to me is you've completed Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, the storyline, and unlocked Trials of Mount Tiamat. That's a solid foot into the mid game. You've probably got at least 2 split the parties done. So you've got your fast core. Still working on main storyline adventures and unlocking evergreens, but you are now stopping. You might have all 4 of kind of the OG patrons, everything but Elminster unlocked, or maybe you've got 2 or 3 of them unlocked, depending on how quickly you gathered champions. But you aren't really grinding patron variants yet. You're stopping and doing mini grinds. You're doing what I call efficient patron variants. I've got a list of them in my Patrons 101 guide. They're basically variants that are non-restrictive, not low item level. They don't have to be like super high level. It's just they're non-restrictive. Their restriction is non-restrictive, so they're fairly straightforward to do. They're the most straightforward to do. Doesn't mean you couldn't do others. It's just path of least resistance kind of stuff. So you're making efficient progress, right? And solidly into the mid game as you're continuing on, like 2 feet into the mid game is you're still focusing on moving through the other campaigns, campaign by campaign, coming into like Icewind Dale and doing the storyline adventure and then unlocking Xeraphon. Wild Bale and the Witchlight, storyline adventure only, unlocking Blushi as the variant. Light of Xerxes, storyline only. Repetition here, right? And unlocking Commodore Crux, Turn of Fortune's Wheel, and attempting to unlock Ren. Vecna doesn't have an evergreen yet, right? And along the way, somewhere you're coming back into Grand Tour, and as you, because the stuff in Grand Tour scales, like you kind of hopped here and then back here and then here and then back here and then back here and then back here. Like that's how the adventures came. So Grand Tour scales up in difficulty, where these others are at set difficulty point. So you're doing that. Like that's mid game to me. Late game is you've completed all storyline adventures that are currently out. You've completed all the base variant. To me, that is the mid game work. All the storyline adventures, all the base variants, so that you get access to the patron versions of those variants. And the late game is the patron grind. The late game is patron variants, Trials of Mount Tiamat, Everett tier 10, gem farming when you're not doing patron variants. That's the late game. Obviously, events, you do events throughout your time in Isle Champions. How far you get is going to be based off the power you've progressed through. Sometimes that's linked to your progress. Sometimes as cash or giveaways, it could change. And then late game is you've completed all of the content of the game. You've completed all the base adventures, base variants, all the patron versions, and your game is your time is literally spent just doing events, doing your natural time gates or manual time gates if you want, doing the new content as it appears, and lots of gem farming. That's all there is in the late game or the end game. I'm currently a late game player. Occasionally, I slip a foot back to the mid game because like there's some variants that the new variants I haven't done, like base ones. Gotta go do them. Just haven't yet. They're all fairly easy to knock out. Haven't spent the time to do it yet. So that's how I define the stages of the game. Everybody's gonna be a little different, but it feels like that's in the current state of the game. That's where I feel the demarcation points are. That's changed over time. As they add more content, these things change and expand. Tamui, a while back, you could do a single patron variant for each of the 4 patrons to unlock most of their goodies. Yes. Is there a similar variant that can do that for Elminster? I mean, there is a single variant that's going to get you the most stuff, sure. But Elminster scales differently. Again, he's the late game, end game patron, so you're going to have to do a lot of stuff to get Elminster stuff. Yeah, so not the same way. No, that's a Mert through Zerial type of thing, and that's the efficient variants can basically knock out. There's one that can get you like, if you were for some reason to wait, and not do any patron variants. There's like one adventure, and it's the name's escaping me at the moment, because we're almost out of time. There's one adventure that could basically get you the bulk of their perks patron shop, but that's unrealistic that's how you'd encounter. All right, folks, that's going to be it for today. We didn't get to Halson, but you know what? I'm going to link the blog for Halson into the chat for people to go read that. Also, I'm going to put my name in here. Click my name, and you can toss me a follow over at twitch.tv/Gaarawarr. Generally, when I'm not having computer issues, I stream Idle Champions there Monday and Wednesday. A little show called Idle Chatter. You get a pop-up in game. I did it this past week on this computer. We just did shorter shows, so I could work on the other one. But then usually I'm also, when my main computer's working, I do guide updates over there on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and a little like chill co-work streams. Fridays I play other games. Yeah. Come hang out. There's no more streams on this channel for the weekend. The streams will be back usually on Tuesday, is usually when they return. So hit them up there. Again, I should be back on Monday. My goal is, the parts are supposed to arrive today. My goal is to, I'm guessing they're not going to arrive until tonight, just to mess with me. My goal is to spend tomorrow putting the computer back together and filling it with coolant, and hopefully not have any leaks, and hopefully everything working right to get everything back up and running. But you know, who knows? Got to roll with it, right? Thank all of you. I want to thank all of you for coming out today and asking questions. I want to thank Jay for grabbing the questions. The song that we're going out on is related to the secret DPS club, in my opinion. It's I'm a Mimic. This is a song about mimics, because the secret DPS club mimics DPS. Look, if I don't have fun with this, no one will. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, it's doing the thing with the music. Hold on, folks. What is your problem? We're going to try this again. I'm going to have to manually... No. Hold on. Right. What's happening is that for some reason it's trying to get this off of a portable hard drive instead of the actual phone music. Here, I think of it. Karaoke versions. Mimic. This should fix it. All right, folks, we're going to try this again. Maybe.
I'm a chair, I'm a table, I'm a treasure chest. Come a little closer. I'm a simple object just like all the rest. Lean a little closer. I'm your favorite jewel, come on, pick me up. Reach a little closer, you know I'm just the thing that you love. I'm a mimic, nice to meet you. You'll never see the light of day. I'm a mimic, pleased to eat you. Can't help it, I was born this way. I'm a mimic, have to keep you. I'm a door on the wall, step a little closer. I can imitate, impersonate, or copy it all to get you even closer. Once you pick me up, you're never putting me down. Stick to you like saffron blue and always be around. I'm a mimic, nice to meet you. You can't help take.